Hi, I'm Delegate Bob Brink, and this is my 6th weekly report from Richmond. The legislation we consider in the House and Senate, including the budget, has a big impact on local governments such as Arlington and Fairfax County and on our local schools. In his inauguration address in January of 2010, Governor McDonnell told us he believed that the government closest to the people governs best. This makes a lot of sense. Local governments run our schools and put police and firefighters on the streets, and the decisions made by school board or county board members are the ones that touch people's lives most directly and most immediately. But while we give lip service to the important role of local governments, sometimes it seems that Richmond tries to make the job of local officials as difficult as possible. Virginia is a Dillon Rule state. That means that in Virginia, local governments generally can exercise only the powers that are specifically authorized by Richmond. This is at the other end of the scale from home rule states like Maryland, which let local governments control their own affairs unless the state government specifically says they can't do something. What this means in practice is that local governments, such as Arlington and Fairfax, need to come to Richmond on bended knee for the slightest of changes in how they operate. A few years ago, I had to carry a bill for Arlington County that would let them pay their county manager once every 2 weeks instead of once a month. Even nitpicking matters like that have to be approved by Richmond. In addition to keeping local governments on a short leash in terms of what they can do, Richmond also makes it hard for local governments to raise the funds they need to pay for the services they provide. The main revenue source for most local governments is the real estate tax. In Arlington, it accounts for 53% of the county's general fund revenue. Relying so heavily on that one tax means that when you have a downturn in the real estate market, such as we've experienced in the past couple of years, local governments are hit hard. That makes maintaining other revenue sources particularly important. But here again, Richmond doesn't do local government any favors. We don't let them diversify their revenue base, and every now and then we threaten one of their existing sources. Just this past week, we considered a bill cutting back on a local tax that would have cost hard-pressed local governments $200 million a year without giving them an alternative revenue source to make up the difference. It took a lot of work to defeat that bill. This paternalistic, top-down relationship between Virginia's state and local governments has been in place for a couple of centuries, and so it's unlikely to change anytime soon. That's not the way we do things in the Old Dominion. But what I think we will see is greater sensitivity to the needs of Virginia's metropolitan areas. The reason is simple demographics. The 2010 census confirmed the huge shift in Virginia's population from the southern and southwest areas of the state to the cities, suburbs, and exurbs in the north and east. A couple of pictures illustrate my point. This is the silhouette of Virginia that we have in our mind's eye. But if you look at the state by population, you can see that most of the people are in the crescent that starts up in Loudoun County, runs down I-95 to Richmond, and then over on I-64 to Virginia Beach. That's where more than 3/4 of Virginia's people now live. In a democracy, representation follows population. So as the decade progresses, the General Assembly is increasingly going to reflect the needs and priorities of the metropolitan Virginia of the 21st century. We saw evidence of this change last week. A group called the Commonwealth Transportation Board sets transportation policy across the state. But for nearly 80 years, the board's membership has been based on a formula that favored rural areas. On Monday, the House passed a bill requiring that the board's membership be based on population, as reflected by our current congressional districts. That bill isn't going to make it all the way to enactment this session, but the direction is clear. Please feel free to visit my website at bobbrink.org or send me an email at delegatebrink@gmail.com. You can also like me on Facebook or follow me on Twitter @delbrink. I look forward to speaking with you again next week.